Send us your mocks. We put out the call on Twitter last week that we were going to be grading Titans mock drafts. We asked for you guys to send us your Titans mock drafts, as many rounds as you wanted to do, and we're going to grade them now. Grading the Titans mock drafts to see what could happen next week when the draft gets underway. This is the Music City Audible. Let's get to it. Oh, welcome everyone to another episode of the Music City Audible podcast presented by Broadway Sports Media in partnership with 440 Sports. I'm Justin Graver, and with me as always is Justin Melo. And like I said, today we will be grading your mock drafts. We appreciate all the submissions we got. We're going to get through as many as we can today. Basically, the goal here is to look at as many possible scenarios in the first round and the rest of the draft, not just the first round, for the Titans next Thursday when the draft kicks off. So we wanted to see just how many different submissions and how many different scenarios we could go through. Also think this is a great excuse, Justin, for you and I to talk through some of these mid and late round prospects, since you've scouted basically everyone. You're way more familiar with these mid and late round guys than a lot of us are, so a good chance to talk about a bunch of guys the Titans could end up targeting in the middle and later rounds by looking at who you out there, the people, selected for their own Titans mock drafts. So not only are we grading all the submissions that we received earlier in the week, late last week, but we're also going to want to grade any more submissions you guys have. So if you're watching this on YouTube, we appreciate it. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that thumbs up button, turn on alerts so you get a notification every time we drop a new video, and put in the comments your mock draft for the Titans. Again, first round, 3 rounds, 7 rounds, however many rounds you want to do. Drop it in the comments below, a mock draft that you're doing for the Titans, and Justin and I will hop into the replies and grade those too. So send us your mocks. Even though we're going to talk through a bunch today here on this show, we're not done grading them just with the submissions we already received. We want to receive more and grade as many scenarios as possible. Justin, how's it going?
I thought this was a crazy concept that you came up with. Let the record show I wasn't fully on board with this idea, ladies and gentlemen, but I love to let Graver do his own thing. He's a little wacky, and I do love the interactive part of it. You know what I mean? We want to interact with you guys. We always want to. So I imagine there are going to be some players in these mocks I've never heard of. In fact, I'm looking at the first one right now, and there's a quarterback that I am not familiar with. I'm going to be blunt. I'm going to be honest with our listeners, because I've watched a ton of guys this year, slightly less than I have in previous years, to be honest. Because number one, people don't know this, but watching these guys doesn't necessarily make me money. It's good for me to be tied in to know what's going on, but my interviews, my daily articles, of course it's good for me to be familiar, but I don't have to actually watch tape to do my full-time job in football,
right,
necessarily. It helps me do it better, and that's why I do it. And also this year, I've been working on a really, really special Titans-based project that I will be announcing probably in 2 months' time or so. Can't wait to share that with you guys. But that took up a lot of my free time over the last year and a half, in truth.
Wow.
So I've watched a ton of guys, don't get me wrong, but the quarterback here from Northern Iowa did not make it onto my watch list.
Yes. So we are going to start here with the mock we received from Canadian Titan. But hold up, before we do, let me tell you guys about Sinkers Beverages in East Nashville and Bluegrass Beverages in Hendersonville, the best place to stock up on all your booze, all your drink and liquor and beer needs, wine, huge wine selection. More on Sinkers Beverages and Bluegrass Beverages in a bit, so stick around if you want to hear about that.
If the Titans take Dallas Turner number 7, you're going to want to be stocked up on that liquor from Sinkers Beverage, right? You're going to want to dive into a couple bottles if they go with a defender in the first round. So make sure you head over there and stock up for what could be inevitable disappointment.
And hey, you need to be stocked up either way, because if Marvin Harrison Jr. somehow falls to the Titans at 7, you're going to want to pop some champagne and celebrate, right?
It's going to be belligerent if that happens.
Head over to Sinkers Beverages and Bluegrass Beverages. We appreciate our sponsors. All right, let's get into it with, like I said, starting with this mock draft we received from Canadian Titan, who has the Titans sticking and picking at 7. You would like him. You're also a Canadian Titan. Sticking and picking at 7 and taking Notre Dame tackle Joe Alt, probably the most mocked player team out there behind Caleb Williams to the Bears. If you look at mock drafts across the league, Joe Alt and the Titans feels like a lock that if he's on the board, it's going to happen. So Canadian Titans sticking with the consensus there, taking Joe Alt at 7. At 38, Darius Robinson, Missouri edge, falls to the Titans. Good pick there. Then in the fourth round, 106, Josh Newton, cornerback TCU. Continuing 146, wide receiver Luke McCaffrey out of Rice. Continuing with pick 182, they have the Titans taking Tip Ryman, tight end from Illinois. Then at pick 221, Theo Day, from the quarterback from Northern Iowa. You mentioned, Justin, you have no idea who this is. Well, let me just preface this by saying this is a throwaway pick because the Titans just traded this particular selection, 221, to the Browns for backup / offensive tackle Leroy Watson. So the Titans don't actually have this pick anymore. So anytime we see it in these mocks, we'll just breeze past it. Then the last two picks, 242, Damani Richardson, safety out of Texas A&M, and 252, the last pick in the draft, Ethan Driscoll, your boy Justin, the offensive tackle from Marshall, who we've brought up on this podcast a couple of times because he met with the Titans, spoke with the Titans, has had
met with
interactions
them three
with the Titans.
times at the Senior Bowl. And they went to watch him play at Marshall during the season. They sent the scout down there to Marshall during the year. So a ton of interest, ton of meetings there with Ethan Marshall.
Right. So we're going to grade these mocks based on how realistic they are and how good they are for the Titans, like I said at the top. So starting off with the realisticness grade, I'm going to go A-. And the reason I'm not going a straight up A here is because the Darius Robinson pick at 38, could he fall to 38? Absolutely. Would the Titans probably pick him if he's there at 38? Totally think that he'd be a great replacement for Danico Autry on this defensive line. The thing is, Darius Robinson's going to be at the draft on the first night. They recently released the invites for the first round of the draft, and he's going to be attending. The other thing is, if you look at his line, which these came out on Monday, the draft line, basically what pick over or under the sports books think these guys are going to be drafted in. I think Darius Robinson's line was around 28, 29 and a half, something in that range. So the sports books are saying he's likely a first round pick. He's going to be at the draft, probably to be possibly selected, or maybe he just wants to be there just in case. We don't really know. We can never really tell with these things, but I don't know that he'll be there at 38, but he could be, which is why I'm going A- for realisticness. What about you?
Yeah, I think it's fairly realistic. Like, weren't Will Levis and Joey Porter Jr. both there last year and didn't go till the top of the second round? So I think it's very realistic. I'd give it an A- as well. And in terms of grading the overall mock, I'd probably give it in the same range. You know, addressing a ton of needs with Alt at 7, Robinson the edge at 38. Luke McCaffrey, a good sneaky pick at 146. You know, maybe can come in and contend for reps in the slot. That's where I expect him to play at the next level. Tip Ryman is one that I really like. In fact, I think he'll go a little bit earlier than this, but it makes sense why he's available this late in mocks. I think people are still waking up to him. This guy's like a 270-pound, 260-pound tight end that tested really well for his size, and I think he's got some untapped potential in the pass game. And then I mentioned the Ethan Driscoll shout for all the meetings they've had with him throughout this process. So definitely a good mock. Not surprised it came from a fellow Canadian.
Yeah, we hit 2 tackle prospects here. You got the edge, a high-ranked edge you like, a cornerback to develop, a slot receiver, a third tight end, and a safety that can be, function as depth in his rookie season or possibly get on the field due to injury. So I like this mock. You hit most of the needs, and you got some good value with these players. So I am giving this an A for how it benefits the Titans. Let's get to our next mock. This one comes from Craig. He has the Titans trading down in the first round to pick 13 to take offensive tackle Talies Fuaga out of Oregon State, one of the top-ranked tackles in this class. If you're able to trade down from 13, get some future draft capital in the process, I like the move if the Titans are able to do it and still snag what could be one of the best offensive linemen in this class. Then he has the Titans trading back again from 38, looking like he's picking up an extra third-round pick here, picking up pick 46, or an extra second-round pick, and also picking up an extra third-round pick. With all these trades back from 7 to 13, from 38 to 44, this draft has the Titans taking 5 guys in the top 106 picks. And in fact, that is as deep as this particular mock draft goes. But at pick 44, Craig has the Titans taking wide receiver Ricky Pearsall out of Florida, a pretty highly, valued guy, a guy who's thought of very highly amongst the scouting circles, who probably will be there in the second round. So a good pick there for the Titans, who could play in the slot, can maybe play outside too. So a versatile guy there to beef up the Titans receiving core. At pick 46, he has the Titans taking linebacker Junior Colson, who we recently talked about in our top 30 visits with the Titans. He has come to Nashville to meet with the Titans. They obviously have a huge need at linebacker, so you like that pick. Then in the third round, pick 82, he has the Titans taking Michael Hall Jr., D-line out of Ohio State, another very highly thought of interior defensive line prospect. We obviously know the Titans need more depth and more bodies and more talent across that defensive line. And finally, with pick 106, he has the Titans taking Cam Hart, the cornerback out of Notre Dame. I like this draft a lot in terms of the needs that were hit, the value of these players that were hit, and just beefing up the weak areas of the roster. I don't know quite how realistic it is to envision the Titans trading back from pick 7 to 13. I think that that's definitely in the cards. We had it ranked as our 6th-ish most likely thing to happen when we did our big board last week in terms of what other players would need to be gone before the Titans are willing to make a move back like this. But picking up an extra second and a third-round pick the Titans don't have would be huge for this team. So I like it from there. I'm going to go with another A- for realisticness. Where do you fall on this mock draft?
Well, I think I got to go a little less on realisticness because there's a bunch of trades throughout, right? He also traded down
That's
from
fair.
38. But that's not the fun part of it. The fun part is grading the players taken here. And, Talise Fuaga, plug and play at right tackle, in my opinion. I'm not quite as high on Pearsall as everyone else is, to be blunt. Like, I don't know that I see a bona fide second rounder. I think I get a slot only vibe from him, and that to me lowers my overall grid. I like the player. I like his ability to consistently separate, but I do think he'll probably be a slot only guy. Junior Colson, love that pick at 46, plug and play linebacker once again. And then Michael Hall Jr. at 82. I love this guy. I think he's being underrated right now. I could see this guy developing into like a Pro Bowl D tackle. I think he's got incredible potential as a pass rusher across the interior. I think he probably goes earlier than this. I'd be surprised if he makes it past like 50th overall, but really, really good player. Great class here by Craig. So casual Titan fan 3. If I was grading this mock in terms of players, not realism players, this is like an A- for me.
Yeah, I agree. In terms of players, I'm giving it an A, but I'm a little higher on Ricky Pearsall, I think, than you are. But yeah, realisticness, I don't know how many times the Titans could possibly trade back in this draft. 2 in the first 2 rounds does seem high, but otherwise, a pretty good draft there. Let's move on to our next one. This one comes from Randy. He has the Titans also trading down from pick 7, this time to number 10 with the New York Jets. And at number 10, he has the Titans taking wide receiver Rome Odunze out of Washington. Now, this is a long draft. Lots of trades in this draft. The first 7 picks have been traded here in this draft. So I'm going to kind of breeze through this one because we got to get through it quickly here. Pick 39 in the second round, a 1-move trade back has the Titans taking Adonai Mitchell, wide receiver out of Texas. Then at pick 43, just 4 picks later, Kingsley Suamatea, the offensive tackle out of BYU. Continuing in the third round, pick 72, Braden Fisk, defensive tackle out of Florida State. Pick 112, Jaden Hicks, the safety out of Washington State. And then a couple picks later, 114, Jalen Wright, the running back out of Tennessee, one of the fastest running backs in this class. And then just a few picks later at 140, taking Jalen Ford, the hook'em linebacker from Texas, very instinctive, athletic linebacker going here in the mid-rounds. Pick 145, Jaheim Bell, tight end out of Florida State. Pick 184, Justin Eboigbe
from Alabama.
Egboigbe, defensive tackle from Alabama. Pick 219, Miles Cole, edge out of Texas Tech. Pick 225, Logan Lee, defensive tackle out of Iowa. And pick 240, Quentin Newsome, cornerback, Nebraska. Now, right off the bat, I'm going to give this realisticness grade a D-, just because this is a lot of trades. Now, there are active GMs on draft day who make multiple trades, but this is too many. The Titans are not going to select this many players in the draft. I don't even know if they could bring this many players into training camp at this point. So you're really slimming down the UDFA class if you end up making this many selections in one draft. But as far as the value goes, I mean, this would be a hell of a haul for the Titans. You get that bona fide wide receiver stud in Rome Odunze, and you get another one in Adonai Mitchell, and then you still address offensive tackle with Kingsley Suamatea, multiple defensive tackles, including Braden Fisk, who many people have as one of the top defensive tackles in this class, in this mock going 72nd overall. You get a safety, you add another running back, not that the Titans need one, but if they end up making 12 picks in this draft. I guess you could use one on a running back. You get your linebacker that you need in Jalen Ford, a third tight end, two more defensive tackles, an edge, and another cornerback that you can develop as depth there. So if this were to be possible, I would love it. I just don't see any scenario like this really playing out.
No, it's obviously an F in terms of realism, but I will say some of the lesser known players I'll comment on quickly before we move on. Justin Ibawigbe from Alabama is a guy that I really like. You brought him up there briefly. 7 sacks this past year. A guy
butchering his name.
Yeah, the guy, yeah, you butchered his name. I might have butchered it too. I can't remember quite how to pronounce it, to be honest, but I think it's rare that an Alabama D lineman gets slept on the way he's being slept on, in my opinion. Like, he goes late in this mock, as you saw. I think he's a candidate to go earlier than people realize. 7 sacks this past year. Had a couple injuries in his past. Finally put that behind him. Played a full good season for the Crimson Tide this year. Then I think you said Miles Cole towards the end of that too. That's a day 3 edge I'm really intrigued by, because I think he's got like some of the longest arms and wingspan in this entire draft class. So I've been really, really curious about him throughout this whole process. He's still green, still putting it all together. Technically, he's a bit of a mess right now, but you get him in with a good D-line coach, good defensive coordinator. So there are some guys that I really like in the latter portion of this mock.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big haul of players, but so it gives us more to talk about. We appreciate it. Thank you, Randy, but I just don't see it really playing out this way. All right, now we have one coming in from Titans Homer. This one has the Titans moving way back in the first round from pick 7 all the way to pick 20, where he has them taking Amarius Mims, the offensive tackle out of Georgia. Look, if you can move back that many spots and still get a guy that you feel really good about being able to mold into a starting offensive tackle, potentially a Pro Bowl caliber offensive tackle, guy with all the tools, high upside, high traits, but admittedly a much higher bust potential than a guy like Joe Alt. He's also a Georgia offensive tackle, which may give some trauma to Titans fans here, but it's a huge trade back here. I don't necessarily think that that's out of the question, because he has the Titans picking up a number of day 2 picks, which we know they need. At pick 49, Chris Braswell, the edge out of Alabama, the guy who played alongside Dallas Turner, but was a very good player this past season, finally getting a chance to start. Interviewed Chris Braswell for the podcast I produce for Fox, and I really like this guy. I think that he could be a good player at the NFL level, and getting him at pick 49 is good value there. At 59, another pick of Ricky Pearsall, wide receiver out of Florida. At 84, Titans get their linebacker in Jeremiah Trotter Jr., Then at 86, they get that defensive tackle they need in Tavondre Sweat from Texas. Pick 129, one of the most, I would say, highest, what's the word I'm looking for? The sleepers that people absolutely seem to love in this draft class. Guy that's being way talked up and hyped up for a mid-round sleeper wide receiver. Javon Baker out of UCF, whose advanced metrics put him in some elite company when you talk about first downs per route run, yards per route run, ability to beat man and zone coverage. A lot of people really like Javon Baker. If you can get him at pick 129, I think that would be a steal for the Titans. Then pick 157, Cedric Johnson, edge out of Ole Miss. Pick 167, Isaiah Adams, offensive guard, Illinois. Pick 177, again, we see Tip Ryman, the tight end out of Illinois. And then the last two picks, 182, Muhammad Kamara, edge out of Colorado State. And Travis Glover, offensive tackle from Georgia State. Now, this is another draft that features a number of trade backs. The first 9 picks here are traded picks in some way or another. So that's a lot of movement. Again, going to have to go, I think, with an F for realism. But if we want, this is a scenario I wanted to hit on, so I'm glad we got this scenario from Titans Homer, which is how far back, if the Titans do trade back from pick 7, how far back are they willing to go? Because if you're going all the way from 7 to 20, you're probably getting a first-round pick in 2025. You got to pay a hefty price to move up 13 picks in the first round. And the idea of that is pretty exciting, even if it means you miss out on the quote-unquote blue-chip prospects of this year's class. The prospect of going into next year with 2 first-round picks, and you still get Amarius Mims at pick 20 here. I really like that as a scenario. If it happened on draft night, I would be excited about being able to move forward with all that draft capital for next year, especially when you already don't have a third-round pick next year. Having 2 first-round picks would be pretty nice for a team that could be in the final phase, like needing to add 1 or 2 pieces to really reach contention. Having those 2 first-round picks next year would be huge.
Yeah, I mean, again, of course, F for realism. Once again, with all the trade packs. But one thing that struck me, and this is why, shameless plug, you guys should make sure you check out my daily interview series on the Draft Network. I've interviewed 7 of these players that are
Wow.
listed here on this draft, including some of the back end guys. Travis Glover out of Georgia State, the last pick. I interviewed him. Why? I'm going to make a self admission here. Titans O line no, Titans scout, a scout, I think it was like running drills with him at the pro day. Like they sent a scout to go watch this guy and run drills at pro day. It was either a scout or the assistant O line coach, one or the other. But Titans were intrigued by him. Mo Kamara, another guy that great sack production that I interviewed, a bit undersized, but the sack production is outstanding at Colorado State. Interviewed Tip Ryman, Isaiah Adams, Canadian native guard out of Illinois. I think goes a lot earlier than 167. Tavondre Sweat, 86, feels realistic now, right? We know the Titans hosted him on a 30 visit, so that's an intriguing one. Nice to see Ricky Pearsall again. I am an Amarius Mims guy. I know that's a bit dangerous because of the lack of snaps that he played at Georgia, but I think he could play left tackle at the next level. If you're moving back and getting a bunch of picks and still getting Mims, I like it. And I like Chris Braswell as well in the second round. I think he's a type of pass rusher they need opposite Harold Landry.
Yeah, big, strong guy who, when we asked him what his best trait was, he said power, power, power. So that's the kind of guy you could use across from Harold Landry, who's more of a speed guy. I should correct myself. In this scenario, the Titans only received a second-round pick from trading to 20 with Pittsburgh, a 2025 second-round pick, along with the picks in this year's draft. So I don't love it as much if you're not getting a first-round pick next year, but just wanted to put that out there. And then before we move to the next one, Justin, tell us about Jeremiah Trotter, because I think the Titans are 100% going to draft a linebacker in this draft. I don't think it will be in the first round, and it could be in the second round, but I would bet more money that it would be a day 3 pick if I had to. However, there's a number of guys they could target. We've talked about Junior Colson at length on our last podcast. We've hit a little bit on Peyton Wilson out of NC State. But what would Jeremiah Trotter Jr. bring to this Titans defense?
Speed, instincts, athleticism, sideline to sideline range. Bit undersized, quite undersized at 6 foot 228. Short arms, 31 inches. So that's the question with him is same thing it was on like a Kenneth Murray Jr. coming out. Can he get off blocks right at the second level? That's tough at 6 foot 228. That's the big thing. But combine, he ran a 4.4 shuttle, 7.133 cone. So he's athletic. I think there's no doubt about it. You see it on tape too, like I said, with the sideline to sideline ability. So I like what he brings to the table. I've got some questions on, can he defend the run on early downs?
Yeah, good summation there. Thanks, Justin. All right, moving on to the next one here. This one comes from Ian. This is a shorter one, not as many rounds here, but also featuring a big trade back. Another one that I think is a realistic trade back scenario, and I really like this draft for the Titans. So let's get into it. They trade from 7 to 13, where they take J.C. Latham, the offensive tackle out of Alabama. At 38, again, they're able to find Darius Robinson, the edge out of Missouri, and stop his slide. Then at pick 44, a pick acquired in that trade down to 13, they're able to pick Johnny Newton, defensive tackle out of Illinois, who I had the pleasure of meeting and interviewing for the NFL on Fox Pod on Monday. Johnny Newton, really interesting guy, funny guy, was a bit soft-spoken when he first started talking to us, but then really warmed up, and I like his energy, I like his personality, and I love his production at Illinois. About 15 sacks over the last 2 years, 20 and a half tackles for loss. He was an All-American, consensus All-American this past season, first team All-Big Ten each of the last 2 seasons. So I would really like to be able to get Johnny Newton there at pick 44 if he makes it that far. He does have, he played half the season last year on a broken foot. So he's dealing with that. He's visiting teams, doing the medical rechecks. His foot's got to clear everyone's medical protocols, and that could be a reason he slides to pick 44 or more than that if people aren't comfortable with his medicals. So anyway, I would like that pick at 44. Then 106, Andrew Phillips, the cornerback out of Kentucky. We had Dane Brugler on the NFL on Fox podcast last week, and he told us that Andrew Phillips was a potential sneaky first round guy that nobody's talking about. The kind of guy that gets drafted on the first round, like a Cole Strange, or like the guys the Seahawks have picked in recent years where you're like, who? That guy's a first rounder? But he said he really likes Andrew Phillips' tape, and this guy could sneak his way into the first round. So getting him at pick 106 in this scenario, love the value, don't know about the realism. And then finally for this mock draft, the last pick, also acquired in that trade down from 7 to 13, pick 112, he has the Titans taking Jalix Hunt, who we saw last week had a top 30 visit with the Titans, the edge rusher out of Houston Christian. I'm going to give this draft a B plus for realism. Again, I think that this trade is something the Titans could look to execute. I'm a little worried about Darius Robinson, Johnny Newton, and Andrew Phillips all being on the board where they are selected here. That's why I'm going with a B plus for realism, but A plus plus for value and benefiting the Titans in this draft.
Well, it was J.C. Latham in the first round, right? I mean, that's a great move back and still get one of the premium tackles. We talked about Darius Robinson. I love him. You brought up Andrew Phillips. I mean, I really like him on tape. I thought he was a nickel, so I was a little surprised by some of the first round buzz that Dan Brugler reported, but of course, no reason to doubt that report. But I'm a big fan of his on tape, Andrew Phillips, and then a couple of some good value picks there in the later rounds as well. And Johnny Newton's an interesting one because I think he's probably a 3-tech at the next level, right? So, him playing with Jeffrey Simmons would be interesting, but maybe don't complicate it. Just get good players and put them next to each other in some order, and they probably figure it out. but I do think he's more of a 3-tech, so that would be intriguing. But definitely from a value perspective, this mock's an A+.
And Johnny Newton played everywhere from 1-tech to 4-tech and everywhere in between for that Illinois defensive line. So he has experience doing it, but I do agree that his best fit is probably sticking there at 3-tech as much as possible. All right, this next one comes from Christian Boyd. Traded back twice in the first round here. Started with pick 7, moved back, then moved back again to 20 again, where he's able to land J.C. Latham. He loved that pick there, being able to get J.C. Latham at 20. I don't know how realistic it is, but we have seen mock drafts more recently that have him sliding into the 20s, so it's not totally out of the question, especially if you're able to trade back twice. You can kind of gauge it at that first trade back if you think he's still going to be on the board a few picks later and then trade back again. I don't know how realistic it is to trade back twice in the first round, but I do like the idea of like gauging who's still on the board and then moving back again to get J.C. Latham. At 38, has the Titans taking Jackson Powers Johnson, the center out of Oregon. If you are comfortable putting him at guard, I think that's a good pick. Lloyd Cushenberry is going to be your starting center, so I don't know if I love this pick. At 44, he's got the Titans taking Ladd McConkey, wide receiver out of Georgia. That would be an A+ for value. At 51, Rook Orororo from the defensive tackle from Clemson, who has probably the most fun name to say in this class. And then at pick 106, I mentioned him in an earlier mock, wide receiver Javon Baker out of UCF. That's as many rounds as this mock draft goes. Look, I like the picks here. I like the players. I'm going to go, again, B+ for realism because I don't know. It's not impossible, but it's not super likely to me that the Titans trade back twice in the first round. I don't really love the Jackson Powers Johnson pick in this particular mock. And I think defense is largely ignored here. You do have Rook Orororo at 51, but no linebacker, no edge rusher. You got that defensive tackle there, but then you're relying on your linebacker to come, from late day 3 and potentially be a starter there. I don't love that. I would have preferred to go a different direction with pick 38, but I love getting Ladd McConkey at 44. I love getting Javon Baker at 106, 2 guys that can make an impact potentially as rookies, as wide receivers, but overall, you traded back twice. You didn't get that much value out of it. The Jackson Powers Johnson pick is not my favorite pick for the Titans right now. If we go back pre-free agency, I would love it. But now that you have Lloyd Cushenberry, it feels redundant. So I'm going to give this a B for the Titans in terms of the players they added.
Yeah, Jackson Powers Johnson, I guess, in this scenario would be playing right guard for the Titans next year. This fan base is going to burn Nissan Stadium to the ground if they take a right guard at 38th overall, right? I think that's the big sticking point here. I love the player, just the Titans need players at other positions, multiple other positions, before they even think about a guard. But love J.C. Latham, Ladd McConkey, great choice, and Javon Baker. What 2 fun receivers that would be to have in training camp as they continue rounding out this core. And Rook Orororo, definitely an intriguing defensive tackle that can get after the passer.
Yeah, I agree. All right, we have another one here. I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more here. So we'll do this one from Big Chig Energy. And I want to hit this one specifically because they only have the Titans trading back from 38, not also trading back from their first round pick and not trading back a million times. This is only a 5-round mock, but they have the Titans sticking and picking at number 7, taking Joe Alt. We love that pick. Then trading down from pick 38, only moving back 6 spots to pick 44, and also picking up a third round pick, number 77 from the Raiders. So this would be a great trade for the Titans. They're able to only move back 6 spots in the second round and pick up a third round pick. And with that second rounder, number 44, he has the Titans taking wide receiver Troy Franklin out of Oregon. And he has the Titans doubling down at wide receiver at number 77 with Javon Baker out of UCF, who we've talked about a couple times now. Then he has the Titans trading down again in the fourth round, giving up pick 106 to the Colts, which I don't know if the Titans are going to make an in-division trade there, but with the Colts in return for round 4, 117 and a round 4 pick in 2025. You move back 11 spots and pick up a fourth rounder next year. That's pretty good. I don't know if this would happen, but I like the idea. I like where your head's at. And then with that pick at 145 in the fifth round, he has the Titans taking Javon Foster, tackle out of Missouri. So I like this draft overall. I, again, kind of wish you would use one of these second or third round picks, 44 or 77, where you have 2 wide receivers being drafted. Use one of those on a linebacker maybe, or a defensive tackle if you like the value you could get there. They do end up with Mo Camara out of Colorado State in the fourth round there, so they fill that edge need, get 2 wide receivers, 2 tackles. You're hitting needs pretty well, but I think there's a little bit of redundancy here. So I'm going to go B+ for the Titans in terms of the grade for the team. And I'm going to go B+ for realism too, just because I don't know how much I like a trade back with the Colts to pick up an extra pick next year, coupled with taking 2 receivers, coupled with the multiple trade backs. So that's why I'm going B+ for realism.
Yeah, I don't love the doubling down on so many positions with such few picks done in the mock, right? Like Joe Alt at 7, no brainer. I don't see the need to go receiver at 44 or 77 in this mock. I think, a corner, a linebacker could have taken an edge earlier than this, even an interior guy. I think a couple I like Troy Franklin, deep speed for days.
Me too.
I don't want to say got a little Calvin Ridley to his game, but I think he's going to fill a role where he could be a bit of a burner, down the field like Ridley has been at times for Jacksonville last year. So, but doubling down Javon Baker, not necessary. And then I think getting the edge at 117 probably could have gotten one a little earlier than that, right? When you factor in the hole that they've got there right now. I do like Javon Foster, though. If they do double down at tackle, which they probably should at some point, Javon Foster is not a bad choice out of Missouri.
We have time for one more draft here. Let's get to one that did not have any trades, which we like just because I do think there's a chance, as much as we talk about a trade back, most of the time you come out of the draft, you wanted to make a trade here or there, didn't materialize. Most teams will end up not making more than one, if any, draft day trade. So let's look at one with no trades here. I like this one from Kenneth. He has the Titans taking Joe Alt at number 7. We love that pick. And then at 38, taking Jerzon Johnny Newton, who we just talked about, the defensive lineman from Illinois. Then at 106, wide receiver Malik Washington out of Virginia, who's another one of those guys that, the Twitter scouts are a really big fan of. 146, Jalix Hunt, Houston Baptist edge rusher who visited the Titans last week. Then at 182, Jalen Ford, the linebacker from Texas. We love that pick. At least I do. 227, Dominique Hampton, safety out of Washington. At pick 242, Trevor Keegan, interior O-lineman from Michigan. And 252, Isaiah Davis, a running back from South Dakota State with the final pick in the draft. I'm going to give this one an A for realism and an A for value. We obviously love Joe Alt. I think they did a good job hitting needs here. Johnny Newton's going to be, we talked about already. Malik Washington, Justin, I want you to give a brief scouting report for anyone who's not familiar with the wide receiver out of Virginia.
Well, I'm going to go with an A for realism and like a B minus for value, just because I think Malik Washington probably goes later than 106 with how deep this receiver class is. It's super deep. He's super undersized, right? That's why I don't think he got invited to the combine, which was a bit of a disappointment for him because he was so productive. He had like 90-something catches for more than 1,000 yards this past season, but he's super small, slot-only type guy, best utilized, towards the line of scrimmage, manufactured touches. With how deep this receiver class is, we've talked about 20, 30 guys. I think you can do better at 106 than Malik Washington. Probably would have been there at 146 or 182 even. I think will be on draft weekend. That's the one holdup for me. Jalen Ford, I'm not huge. Sorry, Hook'em Nation. But Jalix Hunt, I really like at 146. You talked about the Titans hosting him on a 30 pre-draft visit. outstanding picks at 7 and 38 with Joe Alt and Johnny Newton. Probably not the biggest need at 38 with Johnny Newton, but you want to talk about value at a position of need and a best player available. When those two things come together, right, it's a good situation. So I love the top half picks there. Not so crazy about the ones that come after it. Outside of the Jalix Hunt one, I really like that one.
Let me just say about Malik Washington, because I think I like him more than you do. He reminds me a little bit of Tank Dell, a guy who's very undersized, kind of have to worry maybe about his durability at the next level, but a guy who can separate in his route tree at the catch point and very, very dangerous with yards after the catch. I like this guy as a potential Tank Dell. Look, size is what it is, and it's still a big deal, but we are entering an era of football, and we have been for the last 5 years or so, where these undersized receivers, it's not as big of a deal as it used to be because of the way the rules are now. You can't be as physical with guys in their routes. You can't hit them before they catch the ball, obviously, but you can't even deliver those earth-shaking blows anymore as the ball's arriving. So I think, with the new rules that protect offensive players, these undersized receivers are going to be able to stay on the field more and more than they ever were in the past. And the fact that he's just such a good route runner and ability to separate despite being as small as he is, that sounds like what we heard about Tank Dell last year and what Tank Dell showed us in his rookie season. So I'd be okay with the dart throw on Malik Washington, especially when you don't need to rely on him to be one of your top 2, maybe not even top 3 receivers this season. Give him a chance to get seasoned in the NFL. I'm interested in the Malik Washington pick. So that is how I feel about that and Kenneth's mock draft. Is that it, Justin? Do we have time for one more? What do you think?
It's up to you, man. We had so many submissions. I feel bad leaving so many out, but I knew, the way you and I talk, I knew we wouldn't get through that many of them.
Yeah. That's why I want to hit one more. Let's do one more quick one. This is a 2-round mock here. This one comes from Daniel F., who says in his submission, I have solved the Titans. So it's only 2 rounds. We can do this one quickly. At round 1, pick 7, he has the Titans taking wide receiver Rome Odunze. Ooh. And then at pick 38 in the second round, he has the Titans taking a tackle, Kingsley Suamatea. Justin, I just want to present this because I do think this is a possible scenario that could play out for the Titans, is going wide receiver offensive lineman. Everyone's locked in on Joe Alt now. Some people hope Malik Neighbors falls. Some people are praying Marvin Harrison Jr. falls. But overall, for the most part, I think most people are into the idea of taking an offensive tackle, whether it's Joe Alt at 7 or trading back for, J.C. Latham, Talise Faga, one of those guys. Olaf Fashanu, of course. But I think that this scenario isn't getting talked about enough anymore, even though it was getting talked about a lot 3 months ago. So let's bring it back really quick. Wide receiver round 1, tackle round 2. What would you grade this one?
I do like that you chose this one to be our final one because it's the only one I think where we had a receiver at 7 and then a tackle at 38. Right. I'm going to be excited if this happens in truth, because even though I want Joe Alt at 7, I realize the need for a tackle. I love Rome Odunze. I love him. He's just so much fun to watch. He is a prototypical dominant X receiver. I'd be stunned if this isn't an outstanding player at the next level. So I love it. And I get a bit more confidence in that pick if I can come back and get the BYU tackle at 38. He's probably my favorite realistic scenario if they're going tackle at 38, because I like him better than like Patrick Paul out of Houston, who I've seen mocks in that situation. I think Kingsley Suamatea is like a borderline first-round pick. I really like him. I think he's plug and play at left tackle, even for this team. So to get Rome Odunze at 7, and then you still get one of the tackles that I actually like at 38, sign me up. Sign me up for that scenario all day long.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And so I would give this an A for the Titans and an A minus for realism, just because I do think the Joe Alt thing
for realism. B plus
for realism
at 7.
Let's say Joe Alt is the 5th pick. Do the Titans potentially pivot to wide receiver in that scenario? I wouldn't rule it out over, what if they can't? They may want to trade back and take one of the other tackles later, but if no one's willing to bite, no one's willing to give good value, and you're like, well, Rome Odunze is on the board, and Brian Callahan's like, look, this guy reminds me of T. Higgins, and Calvin Ridley reminds me of Jamar Chase. Let's pair them together and make this thing happen and bring back that Bengals offense to Nashville. Hey, I'm just saying, crazier things could happen. All right, Justin, as we close this out, I want to remind everyone out there that we will grade your mocks still. We will continue to grade them. Leave them in the comments below. If you're using a mock draft simulator, just type your results up in the comments. number 7, period. Joe Alt tackle. We'll grade your mock. So leave those in the comments below. Excited to hit some more scenarios and some more grades there. Last thing before we get out of here, Justin, I want to address something. In all of our, basically every draft pod we've done since we started covering this year's draft for the last 4 months or whatever, we have hardly, maybe not even once, talked about the idea of the Titans drafting tight end Brock Bowers, whether that be at 7 or a trade down to 10, 11, 12, 13, whatever it be. There's some people in the comments when we did the top 10 big board who were like, how is Brock Bowers at least not in your top 10 here? And some people went up with our mock draft saying the Titans should go after, like there's lots of people in the comments who think the Titans should consider or should straight up draft Brock Bowers. Tell the people, Justin, why we have not really proposed that scenario much, if at all.
Well, there are a few things for me. Number one, positional value we talk about all the time. I think I'd be stunned if the Titans took a tight end at 7. I think they're happy with Chig and Josh Wiley. They want to add a third, which they said publicly, but I don't get the impression that that's going to be through the number 7 overall pick. Look, I think he's a top 10 talent overall. I do have questions about the position value. I do, and I'm sorry, I hate to say it, but Kyle Pitts didn't help. Right? Like we had that conversation about it at number 4 a few years ago. Oh, he's too good. Don't worry. The Falcons would love a do-over, I think, on that pick. There's no doubt about it. And then I also look at the Callahan offense. Again, maybe this is a factor of having Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd, They never really used the tight end in that offense a whole lot. They've had like 5 different starting tight ends in the last 5 years. You can go through Hayden Hurst, C.J. Uzama. We might need you to refresh my memory. This past year, it was Irv Smith Jr.,
Yeah.
Like different tight end every year. Now, the Titans don't have the same team, but they do have Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins at receiver that they're expecting to eat up a ton of targets. So I don't think they see a tight end at 7 and say, we're going to bring this guy in. Who cares about the position value? Because we're going to use him a ton. We're going to pepper him with targets. That probably wouldn't be the case because they've got DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley. So there are just so many reasons that I don't see them taking Brock Bowers at 7. That clip this if they do. I'll eat it. It is what it is. We're wrong. We're wrong all the time. But that's why we don't factor it in. We're not just saying it, right? We've done the work on this. When you look at Callahan's offense, you look at position value, you look at the needs that they have on the roster. I just can't fathom them taking a tight end at 7.
I agree. There's just so many blue chip type players at tackle, at wide receiver, at bigger positions of need. I would think that they would be more inclined to take a Dallas Turner or a Jared Verse or a Byron Murphy if they trade way back into the first round, instead of, trading back to 13. If they do trade back to 20, like we've seen in some of these mocks, that they would take those guys before they ever consider Brock Bowers. Not that Brock Bowers isn't a good player, but you also have to consider some other things. Tight ends who have success in the NFL are elite athletes, all of them. Every single one, tight end who is a massive passing game contributor in the NFL is an elite athlete. Brock Bowers didn't test. That's not to say he's not an elite athlete. He might be. But if you are an elite athlete, why would you not go show it off at the combine or at your pro day and show people what kind of speed you can run, what kind of power and explosion you have? That to me is just, another tiny, it's not a huge concern because again, you can see the athleticism on tape, but it's a concern for a position that you already have concerns about just because slow adjustment speed to the NFL. Sam Laporta was one of the best rookie tight ends we've ever seen. That doesn't happen very often. So slow adjustment to the NFL. Like you said, not a lot of room for him in this offense. You already have Chigakonkwo. You want to develop Josh Wiley. Don't forget about Thomas Odukoya, who we were very high on in the preseason, didn't end up ever cracking the active roster, but another year of development for him, working potentially with Bill Callahan a little bit in terms of blocking in the tight end room. Don't count him out for the tight end 3 role this year. And just with so many other needs, with potentially Joe Alt, Olu Fashanu, Taluis Fuaga, JC Latham, like any of these other guys, I feel like would be better picks. So that's why we've been so out on Brock Bowers. It has to do with all those factors combined. It's not just any one thing. Yeah, he's an exciting player. Yeah, the tape is great. Just I am so nervous about the idea of taking a tight end at 7 overall when you have such a glaring need, particularly at offensive tackle, but also with so many needs on defense. It's like then you take your tackle in the second round, then you're pushing whatever linebacker, defensive tackle, anything else you need. You're pushing it even further down the draft. So I'm out on the idea of Brock Bowers. All right, Justin, any final thoughts before we get out of here and say goodbye for this episode?
No, that does it. We'll be back next week. It'll be draft week. So we got a ton of stuff coming your way, man, from final mock drafts. We're going to try to get into videos on players that they draft, like, all 22 film analysis of players that are actually Tennessee Titans. We'll try to do some instant reaction pods to some of the picks, even if they come out a couple hours later, or, give us some time on that. We're both working draft weekend as well for our respective companies, but we're going to get a ton of content your way, both throughout next week and then throughout the weekend portion as well, when we actually start finding out who the Titans are drafting. I can't wait.
Yeah, we're just over a week away from finally knowing. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Thank you everyone who sent in submissions. I'm so sorry if we didn't have time to get to yours. We still appreciate it. If you want, again, feedback on your own mock draft, leave it in the comments below and we will grade it. And as we get out of here, let me remind everyone that this podcast is brought to you by Sinkers Beverages in East Nashville and Bluegrass Beverages in Hendersonville. Head over to the Sinkers Beverages website or check the link in this podcast description to join the In-Crowd. In-Crowd members get access to allocated wines and spirits, exclusive events, early access to barrel releases, and more. Sinkers Beverages is on Uber Eats, so if you're stocking up for a draft party, a birthday party, Mother's Day, whatever it may be, you can get all the booze and all the drinks you need from Sinkers Beverages. You can walk over there and head into their giant walk-in beer fridge, or you can just pull out your phone, order from Uber Eats, and they'll deliver it straight to your door. So thanks again to Sinkers Beverages and Bluegrass Beverages. Thanks again to all of you. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, the Music City Audible Podcast. Give this episode a thumbs up button, a like button. And if you're listening on audio, Justin, we haven't done this in a long time. If you're listening on audio and you want to help the podcast, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. If you leave your mock draft as a 5-star review in Apple Podcasts, we will do our best to respond and grade that there as well. If you're just listening to this and you're like, man, they're going to grade people who submit their mock drafts. I'm not on YouTube. How do I get mine graded? Leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and we will grade it there. All right, that will do it. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. Until next week, we'll be back with, like you said, a final mock draft from us, and then all the other content coming with the draft ahead. Until then, you all stay safe out there and tighten up.
A Broadway sports media production.